welcome to the week that was, TIOL's weekly news roundup.
Let's have a quick look at the news highlights this week before moving on to the news in detail.
The Income Tax Department has issued 54 lakh tax refunds of rupees 14,000 crore. Of these, nearly 21 lakh refunds for rupees 3,000 crore were for the current assessment year 2016-17, even before the expiry of the due date for filing tax returns. This was possible as more assessees preferred to e-file their tax returns this year. More than 226 lakh returns were e-filed this year as compared to 70 lakh returns e-filed last year. Similarly, more than double the number of assessments this year also preferred the E-verification facility by using their Aadhaar card or net banking account. Nearly 75 lakh assessees used E-verification as against 32 lakh taxpayers last year. More than 3.32 lakh returns were digitally signed.
The Rajya Sabha passed another important bill this week for creditor protection. The Enforcement of Security Interest and Recovery of Debts Laws and Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Bill 2016 amends 4 acts simultaneously to expedite the disposal of debt recovery applications. These 4 acts are the Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Security Interest SARFAESI Act of 2002, the Recovery of Debts Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act of 1993, the Indian Stamp Act of 1899 and the Depositories Act of 1996. The bill provides a safety net in case of a loan default. It allows secured creditors to take possession of the loan collateral through the SARFAESI Act with the assistance of the district magistrate who has a specified timeline of 30 days to complete the process. The DM can also assist the lender to take over the management of the defaulting company in case the lender has a 51% or a higher stake through conversion of debt into equity. The Lok Sabha had passed this bill earlier this month.
There's a new twist in the GST saga. Will subsequent GST legislations be passed as money bills, requiring only a vote in the Lok Sabha? If proposed as a money bill, the power of the Rajya Sabha shall get immediately curtailed and it can neither reject or amend the money bill. Naturally, the opposition parties are against the GST legislations being proposed as a money bill.
It depends upon the subject matter. It could take the character of a money bill. Some aspects need not be a money bill. Ultimately, actually, it is the Speaker's call and that will be final and again subject to judicial review.
The Finance Minister has not given the opposition any assurance that the bills would be introduced as financial bills. The Central GST and Integrated GST bills are scheduled to be placed before Parliament in the winter session in late November. And now let's move on to the news in detail. Industry demands open discussions on GST.
The GST bill, which has speedily cleared the portals of Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, will soon receive the presidential nod for its journey for ratification by the states. Whether or not the GST actually rolls out by the scheduled date in April 2017, businesses are praying for the best version of GST to be implemented that would require minimal tweaks. TIOL Tube spoke with legal experts and industry leaders for what is still needed for a strong GST to be implemented. Let's hear from R. Sridhar, Senior Vice President, Taxation, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages India, on what the industry wants before the rollout.
We want across the board meetings. They must meet all the committees, all subcommittees, tax committees of all industry chambers of commerce and state chambers, including retailers associations, traders associations. Across the board, consumers should be met over different periods of time. And like the Rajya Sabha committee did, they should go state to state.
While it is important to discuss with industry, there are some pain points relating to the date of transition into GST mode. Let's hear D.D. Goyal, Vice President Finance, Maruti Suzuki.
First pain point would be the day of transition. So on the day of transition, let us say on 31st March, the dealer or our depot will be having vehicles on which excise duty has already been paid. From 1st April 2017, assuming this is the day when GST get implemented, the dealer will have to pay CGST and SGST both. But today's model law does not clearly provide how the input credit would be allowed.
GST will be a national law and the needs of each state are different, pointed out Anil Behel, heading indirect taxation in Bharti Airtel. Let's hear what he had to say.
In the draft GST law, the huge challenge is the telecom circles vis-a-vis state. Services is something which the state governments are going to tax for the very first time. They don't have any experience. Telecom is divided into 22 telecom circles, out of which 12 telecom circles comprise of more than one state. Telecom infrastructure relates back to 94 when this telecom industry was liberalized. All your network systems, all your IT systems have been developed, have been made operational, they are working fine with the DOT guidelines. If we have to follow the spirit of model GST law, are we talking of overhauling the entire backbone of IT systems in telecom? Impossible ask, only to comply with one particular law.
For a GST that is fundamentally strong, let's go to Sujit Ghosh, partner and national head, Adwaita Legal, to see what are the legal challenges facing the government before the GST rollout.
Right now, there are three priority areas. One is the IT backbone, because if you don't have the IT backbone, you will not be able to implement it on the ground level. Second is training of the officers. We are not very clear at this point in time whether it is the same cadre who was carrying sales tax will do SGST, who was carrying central taxes will do CGS, and that's a challenge. The identification of the rate itself is the biggest challenge the government is going to face, given the pushback it has got from the parliament. And that's where a lot of thinking will go into, whether it should be what the government has been talking about, 18%, 24, all of that, or should it be frozen at a certain number or whatever it is. That's one area where there will be a lot of debate.
Sujit Ghosh also had a word of advice for the GST Council to allow national importance and harmony to be the guiding lights in any tricky decisions relating to exemptions or zero rating. He explains the difference.
Fundamentally, in a GST regime, exemptions are the worst word to have, because if you are exempt from taxes, then your chain of credit breaks. True. So nowhere in the world will you have anybody clamoring for exemptions, because people always ask for zero rating and not exemption, because what happens in a zero rating is your credit flows continue. You are taxed at a rate which is zero. And if you are taxed at a rate that is zero, then all the input taxes that you have incurred, you can claim it back as a refund from the government.
Even as the government considers demands from states and industry, corporates are gearing up to sustain higher compliance costs to accommodate GST over the next 2 years. They would need to get their IT and accounting systems ready for the new indirect tax system, train personnel and organize their suppliers and vendors to enable online filing of returns. Small traders may have to incur additional costs for creating a computerized system to become GST ready. These costs are expected to come down once the new indirect tax system stabilizes. Are telecom companies ready for the government spectrum auction?
The government is all set to auction 2,355 MHz of spectrum across 7 bands to start on September 29, 2016, which will bring in more than Rs 5.6 lakh crore in the government's kitty if sold at the reserve price.
Are proposed to be held on 29 September 2016. This is in line with what we've been saying, that the auctions are on track for being held in September.
The government has also made bidding rules easier for telecom companies. Companies winning spectrum in the lower frequency bands of 700, 800 and 900 MHz will need to pay 25% of the bid amount within 10 days of the auction, with the rest of the payment to be made in 10 annual installments after a 2-year moratorium. Companies winning spectrum in other bands will pay 50% of the bid amount within 10 days. Other terms shall remain the same. The government has reduced the rate of interest on the annual installments from 10% to 9.3%. But for the first time ever, the government is ready to auction mobile frequency in the 700 MHz band, which is efficient for 4G services and offers better indoor coverage. Even the cost of delivering mobile services in this band will be 70% cheaper than in the higher 2100 MHz band, which is suitable for both 3G and 4G networks. But already there are waves of dissent in the telecom industry. TIOL too found that the industry is not ready to offer services in the 700 MHz band. Let's see what telecom expert Rajiv Mishra, founder president Association of Radio Operators of India, had to say.
The 700 MHz spectrum, things are not confirmed right now to launch 4G service on this kind of a spectrum, where the businessman, they will buy the spectrum. If a spectrum price is higher, then ultimately that price will be passed to the consumer.
We shall soon know whether companies will invest to buy spectrum in a band if they cannot offer services. Meanwhile, it is an open secret that telecom majors will engage in informal consultations to make the best deal to fill in the existing gaps in their spectrum. And now let's move on to the mudslinging in the telecom industry.
Following the announcement of spectrum auction, media has been rife with reports of telecom majors accusing the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India of favouring a new entrant to the sector, be it in the call drop regulation, change in block sizes for the upcoming auctions, or even the suggested review of interconnect charges. The Cellular Operators Association of India has even written to the Prime Minister's office against the consultative papers floated by TRAI, which allegedly shows up a bias in favour of new entrants. The new entrant, Reliance Jio Infocom, has reacted to these allegations and written to the TRAI and the Telecom Secretary, justifying the tests Reliance Jio needs to conduct for its technology to function optimally. So it needs to offer full services to the public in test trials before launching commercial operations. What emerges from these communications is a deep insecurity of telecom majors against the investment and technology capacity of Reliance Infocom. Let's have a look at some graphics. Currently, each of India's 22 licensing zones have 3 4G slots in specific frequency bands, which means out of 66 4G spectrum slots, the largest spectrum holders are Reliance Jio Infocom and Bharti Airtel. While Reliance holds spectrum in 62 out of 66 4G slots, Bharti Airtel holds 4G spectrum in 35 slots only, after its deal to purchase airwaves with Aircel. Reliance Jio has also stated that it has the world's largest end-to-end all-IP network and has made the largest investments. Reliance Jio is also set to launch LTE data and voice, video and messaging services in India, which will cover 18,000 towns and 2 lakh villages across the 22 service areas in the country. It also plans to launch voice over LTE network for better quality and economic voice calling. Reliance Jio has stated that the test trials allowed by TRAI are as per the terms of its license with the Department of Telecommunications. This situation has raised several questions. Has TRAI discriminated against telecom majors, or are they feeling so threatened by the might of Reliance Jio Infocom that they have approached the PMO? Should the PMO even entertain these complaints once a regulator has been appointed for the industry and has functioned maturely for several years? Can the regulator entertain complaints against itself? Where does the buck stop? On this note, we conclude this bulletin of the week that was. Thank you for watching.
You may write into us at editor@tiol.in, and we wish our viewers a very happy Independence Day.